I will never forget the moment I was talking to another Shark Tank entrepreneur who had to walk away from her business. I finally said it's time to walk away, and tears just came pouring down my face. Because in my mind at that moment, I was living the quote American dream, what I thought. I also thought I had failed. And, it's really wild to look back how far I've come from that moment and to realize it was still only the beginning for me.
Welcome to the Mid-Game Mindset. Join us as we dive into the pivotal moments that shape today's top sales and marketing leaders, RevOps innovators, and entrepreneurs. This is where grit meets growth and the game changes for good. If you find value in this conversation, be sure to share it with another growth leader who would enjoy it. And now, let's get to the show. Welcome to the Mid-Game Mindset. I'm your host, Rich Bishop, and this is where growth leaders come to share their stories of the challenges that they face with their businesses and in their career, the mindset shifts that they make in order to overcome those, and the new heights that they're able to achieve. And today's guest is a friend of mine from the Outlier Project. And if you don't know what the Outlier Project is, you need to know. Courtney Turich. Courtney, thank you for joining.
Rich, I am so excited to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Thank you for joining. And for those of you that don't know, Courtney is an alum of Shark Tank season 3, right, Courtney?
Yes.
Early days.
Early days.
We're going to dive a little bit more into that, but she is also a podcaster for the show Bold Moves, Confident Choices. And she also leads innovation for an amazing medical device company called Cooler Heads. We're going to spend some time on that too. Courtney, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you since we just hit a couple of the highlights.
Sure. Well, okay. So there's a lot there. And, Rich, it's been a journey. So I love to bet on big ideas and discover things that light people up inside. So, for example, I love leading top performing sales teams, creating products. As you mentioned, I created a product that was on Shark Tank. And now I'm driving innovation at Cooler Heads to help cancer patients minimize hair loss during one of their most difficult times in their life. So, beyond all of that, I like to connect with people. I believe in people, and I really believe that's the foundation from where we all thrive from in this world.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it. And we can see that if anybody follows you on LinkedIn, and if you don't, you need to, you'll see exactly what Courtney's talking about. Just really one of those cheerleaders and supporters of the people around doing cool things. And that's really how we ended up making a connection through the Outlier Project, which has been a great start to a good friendship here for sure.
It sure has.
One of the things that I'd like to start with on the show is what we call the mid-game moment. And we've found that growth leaders all tend to have this moment in their careers, either with their company or when focused on their careers, where they run into a challenge and then they end up drawing from experiences outside of work, whether it be from a mentor, a book that they read, or personal experiences that helps shift their mindset so that they can get through it and get out on the other side. And as I describe that, I'd love to find out from you, is there anything that comes to mind as a mid-game moment for you?
Rich, there is, and it goes way back to when I was in high school. We talk about mindset, and we realize through our personal and professional career how powerful our mindset is, and that game needs to be for ourselves. And I'll never forget, I was with my high school teacher. He was actually the gym teacher, and I don't know what was going on in my life, but I'll never forget him saying, "Courtney, tough times don't last long, but tough people do." And at that moment, it just struck a chord with me, Rich. And as I've moved throughout my life, personally and professionally, that quote he shared with me has surfaced in so many moments. I mean, it's very wild to think that something so small as that pivotal moment for me has gotten me out of a lot of dark times, both personally and professionally.
It's amazing how sometimes those little quips that we hear over time, every person that I've talked to that has really gone to new heights and has taken on big things in their life always tends to fall on one or two of those that really sticks with them as an important aspect and an important phrase to be able to continue to fall back on, that continuously kind of comes up in their life.
For sure. You know, you sit here and you think when you're in the thick of something really deep or really dark, it's really hard to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. But we all go through the journey. We all go through the path. We all walk down that dark tunnel. And before we know it, we see the light.
Now, you have been an entrepreneur, which entrepreneurs are going to be in that dark place from time to time, right?
Yes.
I think, was it Seth Godin that calls it the dip? Right, where things go well at the beginning, and then you go through this almost like the old movie, The Never-Ending Story, right? That journey in the middle where it's tough and you're running through quicksand to try to get out on the other side. I know you've had your share of ups and downs along the way where you've come back to that phrase. Have you always been an entrepreneur?
Rich, I believe I have. And I say that because I'm very creative. My mind, I like to think of ideas. Like I said, I like to bet on big ideas. I like to see how we can do things differently. I'm always envisioning myself in the future of what business am I going to own, or am I going to invent another product? And you know, through my professional career, not only with my Shark Tank company, I've been in the medtech space for a long time. And the companies that I have worked with, when I reflect back, they've all been a very entrepreneurial spirit company. And when I say that, they allow the sales reps to own their own territory, create their own business. They don't micromanage. And I'm a big believer in letting my people do what they do best and thrive and not hover over them, because I want to empower them to do what they believe they need to do for their own territory, because that's how I've always been for myself. I like to take the reins and I like to figure it out.
That's great. And being able to give people that space to test some things out, to take ownership and initiative, that's important in growing a strong culture and a strong team. But that also puts a lot of emphasis on the recruiting aspect, because not everybody can really thrive in that kind of environment where they are kind of the master of their own universe or their own territory, right? So how do you, when you're looking to bring people into some of those companies, and I do want to go back to some of the early days too, but when you're bringing people in, what are you recruiting for, and how do you know when you're looking for somebody that they're going to thrive in that environment that you're building?
Rich, a great question, because a lot of people will say they don't like to be micromanaged, but they really don't understand. Is that true? Because you're right, not everybody thrives in that environment. Mm-hmm. So when I'm recruiting for my team or any team I have in the past, it's really understanding who that person is at the core. So can they share with me what their strengths are? And if they do share, when they do share their strengths, do they align to that type of environment? Can they dig deep within themselves when I'm going through asking them questions about how they structure their day? Are they a fire starter, right? Do they actually have it inherently within them to get up and do what they need to do on their own? So it's little questions like that that help me really figure out, are they entrepreneurial minded, or are they somebody that I'm going to have to hold their hand every step of the way? Because the reality is, I don't have time for that. I don't want to have time for that. I want to put trust in my people and let them wake up every day and go do what they need to do for their own territory so we can all rise together.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Is there a personal experience that you draw from that kind of set that up for you? And because I've found that tends to be a learned behavior and not necessarily something that people are naturally born with, is having that trust and being able to build that environment. Is there an experience maybe from a personal experience that really kind of set that up for you?
When I look back at my past and where I've been, from when I was younger into high school to college, I always gravitated towards leadership roles. I always was the one who was willing to step up and, take the lead for whatever it might be. There's one moment, that came up recently when I was preparing for your podcast, Rich, that I actually forgot about. And I like to call myself a cheerleader because one of my top strengths is positivity. And there's a fine line with positivity, right? Like if my cup is half full, mine's always full. So I have to make sure that I walk the line at times and I'm not always over the top. But when I was in college during the summer, I would teach cheerleading camps. I know, as cheesy as that sounds, it is, but I would teach these massive cheerleading camps for 300 to 500 women at a time, or girls, I'll say girls. And when I go back to that moment, it's me on stage teaching these young girls, how to do these moves, how to do this, how to do that, to encourage them, to really give them the confidence, to move forward with their, quote, cheerleading experience. So it came back from, I was never afraid to be on stage. I was never afraid to give encouragement. And then that slowly just evolved into my professional world too, where I just kept stepping up and looking at people and believed in people. And when I believe in people and I can listen to them, that inherently builds trust.
Being able to hear what the other person is saying, take it into consideration, and especially when you're building that culture, to be able to allow them to say, all right, well, try it. If you think that that's the best way to go, let's see how that goes. And I support you in that and in making that happen. That's fantastic. So speaking of being on a big stage, let's dive in for a few minutes here and talk about your experience with Shark Tank. That is a show that my youngest daughter, she's 14 now, she does have her own business. I think in many ways she's inspired by a lot of the people that have been on Shark Tank. She sees that and absolutely loves it. It's kind of our time together. What is that experience like? Preparing for it, walking into that room with those sharks there. What was that like for you?
It was every emotion possible. I mean, you walk out, it's true. When you walk out there, it's the first time you're seeing the sharks and the first time they're seeing you, Rich. So before you even get to that aspect of the show, you have to do a lot of checks and balances along the way. And the funniest part about Shark Tank, with all those checks and balances, every time you talk to a producer, they say, we want to move you to the next round, but it's never a guarantee. So you're always just dangling on this little thread. Is it going to happen or is it not going to happen? Even to the moment when you walk, they fly you to LA. It's every step when you're in LA is never a guarantee. And even when you're out there on the stage, Rich, it's still not a guarantee. If you walk away with a deal or you don't walk away with a deal, it's TV at the end of the day. Yeah. So they have to have as many yeses as they have nos. So, I mean, until you air on national television, you're on pins and needles to know if you're even going to make it to that grand finale.
Wow. And how, like, the grand finale, meaning the published show?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when the sharks are going back and forth and you're starting to negotiate, right, the deal and what the potential deal looks like, if they're interested, luckily for you, they were. What is that negotiation like? And then once somebody says, yes, yes, it's a deal, let's move forward. What happens after that people don't necessarily see on TV?
Yeah, so what a lot of people do not see on TV is first. Most companies, entrepreneurs are out there for anywhere from an hour to even a few hours on stage. So you have, right. So you have to think about, they really cut it for TV. So you never know when you walk out how long you're going to be negotiating with the sharks. Luckily, ours happened pretty fast. We are at the end of the day. I believe they were tired. So we were only in front of the sharks for about 45 minutes. We did a little back and forth, not too much, but then we ended up coming to an agreement on a deal with Lori Grenier and Mark Cuban, which is really cool. And honestly, we had no clue if we were going to get, it didn't sound like we were going to get a deal. So if you watch the episode, you wonder, you really are thinking we're not getting a deal. And then last minute we end up getting a deal, which is really freaking cool. But you walk away, basically you come off the stage and they scurry you to a different hotel than you were before because they don't want you talking to any entrepreneurs about your experience. So you basically get maneuvered to a new hotel and you sign a document, an NDA, that basically says you will not talk or they threaten you with millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And of course, your lips are sealed. The only people my business partner and I told were our spouses. So then you walk away from that event and there's a ton of due diligence behind the background. Right? It's like any business. They're not going to take our word verbally of this is what's happening. We had a lot of paperwork back and forth with their attorneys, our attorneys, and then our deal closed probably 7 months after we aired on Shark Tank. Well, we filmed on Shark Tank, and then we didn't air for almost a year later.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
And we got 1 week's notice before we aired. Right.
And then at that point, obviously, the terms of the NDA, you can then start to talk about it. And once it airs, right, because they want to protect their asset, which is the show, and making sure that the surprise is there for everybody and it's not ruined. So then you've got Lori and Mark that you're now working with. Take us through the rest of then what happened with the company and with you.
Yeah. So Mark and Lori were very involved. I will share with you, Mark Cuban always has the entrepreneur's best interests. I don't know how this guy does it, but you would send him an email and I'm telling you, he would respond within minutes. It might not be a lengthy response, but it would be very direct and to the point. He had a full team to help us with website design, just financial accounting and all of that. We had a business manager. They would set up different places where we could go do big promotions at. We even went on Shop HQ, so one of those shopping channels. So I got to present on a shopping channel, which was really cool. And not going to lie, for a moment, I thought that was my next calling, Rich. I thought I was going to be...
I can see that. I can see that. It may still be.
Yeah, I did. And then Lori Grenier, awesome. She got us on QVC. I wasn't personally on QVC, but she did represent the product there. We had a great run. And reality was, at the end of the day, it just wasn't going to bring in what we needed financially to survive. Everything that came in went back out for inventory, and it was just this constant cycle. And then it came to, with me, my business partner and myself, is this what we really want to be doing? Right? Like, are we really in this? And I was really struggling financially. And my husband looked at me and he said, we can't keep doing this. We got to move on. And that was a moment that I had to make a hard decision. Was I going to stay or was I going to go? And part of that was my marriage, right? Like, I really had to look reality in the face and say, is this something I can keep doing? And I couldn't.
That is something so hard for anybody to go through, because you've poured your heart and soul into building this company to get this to where it was. You've had some amazing success with it, right? And getting those deals. But then to be able to say, you know what, this isn't quite going to cut it for what we need and what we want out of our lives, and be able to shift. First of all, there's nothing at all wrong with doing that. But second of all, I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs that feel like there is, or maybe there's a sense of shame at the moment that happens. Did you go through some of that as well? And what was that like?
I sure did. I went through a lot of shame. And Rich, even thinking about it, I get a little emotional. Because I knew deep down inside the answer was that I needed to move on, but I was so afraid to say it out loud. I will never forget the moment I was talking to another Shark Tank entrepreneur who had to walk away from her business. I know where I was standing in my house, exactly in the doorway when I finally said it's time to walk away, and tears just came pouring down my face. Because in my mind at that moment, I was living the quote American dream. what I thought. I also thought I had failed.
Yep.
And, it's really wild to look back how far I've come from that moment and to realize it was still only the beginning for me.
That release of the tears, in many ways, I've been in similar situations, not quite to the extent that you're describing, but where you have this dream that you're going for and you're banging your head against the wall, trying to make it into something that you want it to be or you hope it can be, but it's not quite going to be there. That release of tears is almost like the release of the anxiety and the pressure, almost like holding your breath, like, I'm going to make this work. You know what? I need to do something else. I need to just move on. And that release must have been tough at first, but I'd imagine that it took a weight off of your shoulder, not trying to hold on to something like that.
Oh my gosh, it took a huge weight off my shoulders. And now when I reflect back on that moment, or I talk about that moment, Rich, and I share with others, I have this image where I'm suffocating and like basically where I can't breathe. That's how, when I look back, that is how I was feeling in the moment. And it really, that was an example of a dark moment in my life that I didn't really realize was so dark until I got on the other side.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. You can't quite see it when you're there in the midst of it. So tell me about the other side of it. What then happened? What did you go to next? And when did you start to feel alive again?
When I finally walked away from my Shark Tank company, I went back into the medtech space. And Rich, I told myself if I was going to go back into that world, I would only work for startups. So back to your question, have I always been an entrepreneur? That right there tells me a lot that yes, the answer is, because working for a startup company allows me to keep that entrepreneurial spirit, that fire inside. I get to wear multiple hats. I get to be a little bit of a cowboy. There's no perfect solution. We don't always have the playbook. We're writing the playbook as we go. And that's what excites me.
I love it. Build on the fly, figure things out, try new things. If it doesn't work, no problem. We go to something else, right? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So was Cooler Heads the next one, or was there something in between?
There was a previous company before Cooler Heads where I'm at today. I went to go work for a mentor of mine, Ryan Denny, and I can't say enough about him because it was when I stepped back into the med device space, I told myself that I wanted to go back into leadership. But what I didn't realize is I needed to take a step back and just go in and take care of myself. And that was being a rep. So I went back in, ended up having just this amazing ride with a startup called Verum Medical for lung cancer. And then when that was over, I stumbled upon Cooler Heads. And that's where I've been the past almost 4 years, which has been another crazy wild ride. I joined Cooler Heads before we commercialized. So as part of the setting up that commercialization strategy. And I'll never forget running around trying to sell that first unit myself.
That's great. So yeah. you get to, you help with commercialization. You then, of course, want to prove, hey, yes, there is a viable market for this. We can do this. After being a rep to kind of, I guess, in many ways, get your feet under you again, right? Is that kind of what that was about, being a rep and just kind of getting back into the rhythm of things, and then that kind of opened up the door for Cooler Heads and what you were doing there?
Yeah, a great point, Rich. So it did. It allowed me to just get my feet under myself again and really to get my head straight, to get my mindset back aligned and what I really needed to do to embody who I was again at the core, because I'd lost myself there towards the end when I left my Shark Tank company. But when I was at that lost startup, I had opportunities where I grew into some leadership roles within the company. Mm-hmm. And that allowed, again, that fire inside to come to the surface to help grow some younger reps below me. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had professionally to date, except for now Cooler Heads.
that you got a taste of that leadership again,
I
almost,
did.
right? It was like, all right, yeah, that's what I want. It sounds like you started to kind of feel alive again in that moment as a result.
Not kind of. I did. I really came alive and really started to understand who I was, Rich. I think that's an important part of all of this. While I felt so lost when I left my Shark Tank company, stepping in and just taking care of me allowed me to really focus on who is Courtney. And that's where I rebuilt my confidence. I learned where my voice was again, and also just realized to go out and be myself was one of the most powerful things I could do.
Was there something about that role and that experience that did you find something new, or did you rediscover something that you knew was there, but maybe you had repressed it or set it aside because of what it was, because you were chasing that American dream?
I believe it was always there. I think it was lost, and I didn't really understand my strengths to their full capacity. Back to, I'm a huge believer in the Gallup Strength Finder. I knew what my strengths were, but it wasn't until I started to see some successes happening within my territory that I started to reflect back and say, why am I doing so well? Why am I feeling like I'm really in this great groove? What am I doing differently now that I wasn't doing before? And I was embodying who I was at my core. Like I understood myself finally. And then I took that and I passed it on to my team and helped them do the same thing. Which, to watch them have those aha moments when they saw their strengths surface and that they were thriving and we were all working, like we were on this, like we were just all in sync, so dialed in. It was one of the coolest experiences ever, Rich. And that's when I realized I had this gift of helping other people realize what makes them shine. And if I can do that for them, it makes me shine even more.
For sure. Definitely. I love that. And a lot of people do end up needing to, I don't know if lose a part of themselves is the right way to phrase it, but you almost take for granted the parts of you that really light you up and that really make you unique until you've set them aside or haven't focused on them. And then something inevitably comes back and you go, oh, wait a second. That's how valuable that was, or that's what that actually means for me to be that kind of leader and to help other people have those aha moments. And then it sounds like it becomes a big driver for you and what you set out to do for the rest of your career and the impact that you want to have with the people around you.
Yes. Yes.
So take us through then Cooler Heads. You start off in the commercialization phase. You just recently, congratulations, by the way, announced Series A funding, right? So
Thank you.
Getting from not even commercialized to Series A is a big leap and one that many entrepreneurs don't ever really get to. How has that journey been? And now you're starting to build your team up again. What is that like?
That journey is like any entrepreneurial journey, Rich. I mean, back to, we were talking earlier about those highs and lows. It's an emotional roller coaster. It is the same way at a startup. Nothing is a guarantee. Tomorrow is not a guarantee. And again, I'm very fortunate to my mentor, Ryan Denny, who introduced me to Cooler Heads. And he was with me at the very beginning when I started at Cooler Heads. We created this commercialization strategy together, and really we wanted to see, can we make this work? Is the market really going to embrace this technology? And the fun part of it was they did. And it hasn't always been perfect. By far hasn't been perfect. I mean, through the days of trying to raise the Series A, and I'm going to give a shout out to Kate Dilligan, our CEO. She's a female founder, CEO. We're here because of her cancer journey. And she took it upon herself to create a product that was easier to use, more user-friendly for both the staff and patients, and to give patients that empowerment that they lose so much during chemotherapy or during their cancer diagnosis. So to be part of this mission, to be part of selling that first unit, to be part of treating that first patient and holding our breath to make sure the system actually worked like we said it would to the FDA, like those are moments you can't make up or you can't relive, Rich.
I can see that almost being like, all right, my mind goes to sports, right? So apologies for those of you that aren't big sports fans, but that's almost like I could picture you sitting around the table waiting for the feedback and waiting for the response of how it's worked. And does the research come back the way that we hope it will or we expect it to? Almost like the suspense at the end of a big sports game, the Super Bowl, whatever, right? It's coming down to the last minute. The anticipation's really high. The stakes are huge, and you really want that win on the other side. It sounds like you guys have not only got that win, but have really run with it from there.
Spot on. I mean, that analogy is perfect, Rich, because we were a very small team. I think there were less than 6 of us on the team at that point for that first patient. We were all on pins and needles, waiting to see the end result, right? So, now watching that evolution to see how much my team has grown, from me running around trying to sell the product to now there's more than 14 people on my team pushing cooler heads. To see the facilities we're in today, we're in some big institutions, and we just keep checking them off. And that, when you can take a step back, and I don't take a step back enough, Rich, I do want to share, we all need to take a step back and look at our wins, big and small. But when we finally raised the Series A was really the point where I took a step back and I allowed myself to look at every single milestone we achieved. And I'm proud. I'm proud of our team. I'm proud of myself. And I would do it again.
You should be proud because you guys have done an amazing job. And, the entrepreneur spirit, of course, you're going, all right, well, now what's next? Yeah, we did that. Check the box. We got where we need to. But now that we've raised the funds, we've got to continue to grow. We've got to continue to push. So it is good to step back and look at the landscape of what you've built. But as you do start to look forward, what's next for you and Cooler Heads in this case?
Yeah, you're right. And as an entrepreneurial person in a startup world, there's always, you hit that milestone and you've got to just keep moving. What's next, right? You can't stop. And I also think that's why I thrive in this environment, because I get bored easy, Rich. So I always have to look for what's next. We hit a big major milestone of our Series A, but we also recently found out that we're moving to a Category 1 code for reimbursement, which is huge. If you don't know this out there, that means Medicare is officially recognizing scalp cooling as something that is medically necessary.
That is a huge hurdle to overcome, but something that is fantastic for you guys. That's great.
Yes, it's awesome news, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Just because Medicare now recognizes scalp cooling as something that's medically necessary, we have to convince the private payers. It's just the infancy of the process. But if we're really going to make our impact in the market and really allow scalp cooling to be available to any patient who wants to use scalp cooling during chemotherapy, we've got to flip those private payers. So that is, I will tell you, what's the next thing on the big horizon for us that we have to focus on. And we've got to stick the landing.
It's something that I know patients are looking for. So hopefully the voice of the patients, along with what you guys are doing and getting your message out there, is enough to start getting that private payer support on some of these solutions here, because it does make a big difference in patient quality of life and the way that they go through their treatments.
It sure does. And I'm embarrassed to say this when I first heard about scalp cooling, because I've never had somebody close to me go through chemotherapy, knock on wood. But I used to think it was vanity. And it is so far more than vanity. It is privacy, it's identity, it's maintaining a sense of self during something that is one of the most challenging things a patient or human can go through. And watching patients come out on the other end and keep that identity, and that integrity within themselves is a pretty awesome feeling.
Having a mission-based business like that just provides that extra oomph behind it, right? That extra motivation behind what you do and your enthusiasm for it. I know a few episodes ago, we had Krista Anderson on, who started her company called Healthy on the Go from her own cancer journey 2 times through, and not being able to get healthy food in the hospital. They wanted to give like burgers and fries as the hospital food while she's in there being treated for cancer. It's like, come on, guys. So just amazing that some of those personal journeys can really create those mission-based businesses that are impacting hundreds and thousands of people that are going through some of the same things that your founder had, that Krista went through, and others as well. It's so great to see, and something that we should be supporting.
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about you being on stage, and you thought that may have been your next calling. I think you're getting close with your podcast. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast and how that got started, and what is going on in terms of the themes that you're pulling out and the lessons that you're learning there.
Yeah. So Rich, it goes back again to reflecting on myself and, back to that mindset. For the longest time, I questioned myself over and over again. And did I have what it takes? I had the imposter syndrome. And when I left that Shark Tank company and started to learn more about who I was, I started to reflect on every bold move I had made in life that got me to the next level. And it got me thinking, we all have bold moves, every single one of us, but we don't give ourselves enough credit to really acknowledge those bold moves. And back to me helping others figure out what makes them shine or identify their strengths, this is really how this started to evolve. I wanted people to hear others talk about their success, their journeys, their bold moves, what catapulted them to their next level in life. Because we learn from each other. And if we can listen to somebody else share that moment for them, it has us reflect upon ourselves. So as I'm going through my podcasts with so many amazing people, it's been really fun to watch them reflect back on that bold move. It becomes very emotional because we don't, again, give ourselves enough credit for that pivotal moment in our life, or for that one moment that really made us say, wow, I'm awesome, right? Because we're all awesome. We're everything. You're awesome, Rich. I'm awesome. And we're going to own it. Again, it's sharing our voice, helping others share their voice, helping others see that spark within themselves. And then I always end with, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I love that reflective. Let's look back and how would you, I guess, knowing what you know, get through some of these ups and downs that you're about to go through from 18 to however old you are now, right? What advice do you give at that point in time?
Yeah. You started off with a question to me of, that mindset game or that something pivotal in my life. And that's what I go back to every time I'm asked about my 18-year-old self. It's reminding myself tough times don't last long, but tough people do. So hold your head up high, roll your shoulders back, let yourself exude confidence, because everyone will see it and feel it that you surround yourself with.
It's contagious.
It is contagious.
It absolutely is. Well, Courtney, I think that's a great place to leave it. I think that's a great exclamation point on this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
So I'm all over LinkedIn. Just reach out to me, DM me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me at Courtney@coolerheads.com.
Great. Courtney, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Rich. And if I could share one thing with your audience, go be bold, be confident, and be you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks for joining us on the Mid-Game Mindset. If today's episode sparked a new idea or helped shift your perspective, share it with someone who's ready to grow. Subscribe, leave a review, and keep playing the game. With the right mindset, the best moves are still ahead. Until next time, keep changing the game.